Geneva's fall. The midday sun hammered Place du Bourg de Fort, turning the ancient paving stones into a shimmering haze. Dr. Alain Laurent, more at home amidst beakers and microscopes than Geneva's vibrant core, adjusted his glasses. His eyes narrowed against the glare as he watched pigeons scavenge crumbs near the fountain's edge. These obligatory press briefings chafed, but the Global Health Consortium had insisted. His universal flu vaccine was tantalizingly close, and they demanded global fanfare. He swallowed, the bitter taste of apprehension clinging to his palate. Threats had come. Hushed digital warnings urging him to bury his findings. He dismissed them as the rantings of fringe minds. But here, exposed beneath the unforgiving light, a shiver of premonition snaked up his neck. A glint of polished metal sliced through his focus. A motorcycle, driven with reckless abandon through the pedestrian area, its engine a guttural roar. He barely registered the rider's unnaturally gleaming helmet before. Existence dissolved into a maelstrom of sound and agony. Bedlam consumed the square. Shrieks tore through the air, a counterpoint to the screech of tortured tires and the sickening impact of flesh on stone. Laurent lay sprawled across the cobblestones, a blossoming stain of red blooming across the pristine white of his shirt. The motorcycle, abandoned and smoking, rested nearby. Its pilot had melted into the old town's labyrinthine alleys. Agent Isabelle Moreau arrived 20 minutes later, the fading cry of sirens echoing in her head. The scene was a grim tableau. Yellow tape demarcating the perimeter, paramedics laboring over Laurent, a futile effort, she suspected, and a press corps held back by police lines, their cameras flashing like carrion birds. Isabelle knelt beside Laurent, ignoring the warm stickiness spreading across her gloved hand as she sought a pulse. Nothing. She eased back his ruined shirt, revealing a precise, almost clinical puncture just beneath his heart. Professional, remorseless. Anything? She asked Officer Dubois, a weary veteran whose face was drained of color. Dubois shook his head. Just the bike stolen. Naturally, no clear eyewitness accounts of the rider. Too quick. Isabelle's gaze swept the scene, her practiced eye hunting for the aberrant detail, the off-key note. Then, she spotted it, a slender, silver pen resting near Laurent's outstretched hand. Not a pen, she realized. A USB drive in disguise. Back at the GCHQ safe house, Isabelle connected the drive to her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she navigated layers of security. The sole file held a seemingly random string of alphanumeric characters. VX2J9KQL7B3Z. What in God's name? She muttered, feeding the sequence into every accessible database. Nothing. Exasperated, she contacted David Chun, her man at Interpol's cybercrime unit. David, I need your magic. I have what seems to be a coded message, likely tied to the Laurent hit. Can you crack it? David, a renowned night owl, sounded surprisingly alert. Laurent? The virologist? It's all over the news. They are painting it as some kind of random incident, a lone wolf. It's anything but, David, this message. It's the linchpin that I can feel it. Hours later, red-eyed and fueled by caffeine, David called back. Isabelle, you were right, it's a complex cipher, leveraging a rare biological index as its key. The message? It's chilling. He paused, his voice thick with foreboding. It decodes to Pandora Unleashed, Strain VX2, Global Vector Imminent. Time is critical. The news of Laurent's demise raced across the globe, amplified by the internet's insatiable appetite. Initial reports were murky, attributing the attack to a motorcycle incident. But fragmented truths, and their shadow selves, soon followed. Conspiracy theories blossomed in the web's darker corners, fueled by speculation regarding Laurent's research and the potential of his landmark vaccine. Geneva scientist murdered. Vaccine sabotaged? One headline blared. Another screamed, Global FLU pandemic looming? Doctor's death triggers panic. A wave of dread rippled through the populace. Supermarket shelves were emptied as people scrambled to stockpile supplies. Airports overflowed with travelers desperately trying to flee perceived epicenters. The world stood on a precipice, oblivious to the true horror about to be unleashed. Isabelle stared at the translation, the words seared into her consciousness. Pandora Unleashed. Laurent's final testament. She closed her eyes, a glacial chill permeating her soul. They were already behind schedule. Time was evaporating. She knew she had to find Jason Statham immediately, the reluctant recruit. The garage rang with the percussive beat of wrench on steel. Jason cinched down a bolt on the classic Mustang's engine, a sheen of perspiration slicking his brow. Sunlight blazed off the polished bumpers. Tiny suns reflected in the intensity of his gaze. He swiped at his grime-coated hands with a stained cloth, a ghost of a smile gracing his lips, serenity, stability. Years since he'd held a weapon. Since the electric jolt of imminent danger, he'd fight to keep it that way. The chime of the overhead door shattered the quiet. Jason tensed, instincts flaring to life. He hadn't seen a customer in weeks. The word was out. Solitude trumped solvency. Framed by the stark sunlight, a woman stood poised at a severe, dark suit, impeccably cut, whispered power as she advanced into the shadows of the garage. Her features sharpened into focus. A keen, perceptive intellect burned in her eyes, and her mouth hinted at a sardonic edge. "Mr. Statham?" Her voice, a silken contralto, carried a distinct French lilt that he offered a curt nod. "Depends, are you selling something, or just hopelessly lost?" A sculpted brow arched. "Neither, Mr. Statham, that I am Isabelle Moreau that my visit concerns Dr. Laurent." The name landed with the force of a physical blow. Laurent, a specter from a long-interred life. "I don't know any Dr. Laurent," he parried, the lie ringing hollow. Moreau remained unmoved from within her jacket. She withdrew a slim, brushed metal case and flipped it open. Nestled inside was a single photograph. Laurent, younger, beaming shoulder to shoulder with Jason, both clad in fatigues. "Perhaps this will refresh your memory," she offered, her tone utterly devoid of inflection. He took the picture, his grip tightening, threatening to crease the paper. The ghosts of yesteryear materialized. Arid training fields, hushed strategy sessions, the unspoken brotherhood forged in peril. "What about him?" "He is dead," Moreau stated, the word hitting like a bullet. "Murdered 2 days ago, in his Geneva laboratory." A glacial chill spread through Jason's veins. "Laurent? Gone. Unthinkable." "How?" "That is what we are endeavoring to ascertain. The official report cites a botched robbery, but our assessment points to something more calculated, connected to his research." She paused, her gaze piercing. Project Chimera. A curse escaped his lips. Chimera. The clandestine endeavor they believed extinct, the one that had nearly devoured them both. "I'm done with that. I abandoned all of that." Dr. Laurent's research was exceptionally sensitive, Moreau pressed, dismissing his denial. It involved the creation of amplified pathogens. "Our belief is that someone coveted this research and was willing to extinguish a life to obtain it." Jason raked a hand through his hair, leaving a greasy streak across his forehead. This couldn't be real. He'd constructed a life, a tranquil refuge worlds away from the deceit and danger. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked, his voice strained. Moreau snapped the case shut and returned it to her jacket. "Because, Mr. Statham, you were Dr. Laurent's most promising student. You were intertwined with Project Chimera from its inception. You possess a deeper understanding of his research, his methodologies, than any living soul." She advanced, her gaze unwavering. "And we require your assistance to prevent whoever extinguished him from unleashing what he created." He averted his eyes, jaw tight. He understood the implications. He grasped the potential for global catastrophe embedded in Chimera's secrets. He knew the terrible burden of that insight. "I can't," he rasped, scarcely audible. Moreau simply held his gaze, her silence pregnant with expectation. "You can, Mr. Statham. You must. Because if you fail, the world as you know it will cease to exist." Project Chimera. Isabelle Moreau exhaled a plume of cigarette smoke that danced in the sterile air of the Situation Room. The room itself was a study in contrasts. State-of-the-art touchscreens flanking a scarred, mahogany conference table that looked like it belonged in a gentleman's club, not a clandestine government facility. Statham stood, arms crossed, facing the screens. Moreau sat, a picture of elegant nonchalance, a stark contrast to the urgency that throbbed beneath the surface. "Project Chimera," she began, her voice husky. It began almost a decade ago, an off-the-books initiative funded by, let's just say, powerful interests who believed in securing a biological advantage. The screens flickered to life, displaying electron microscope images of a virus unlike anything Statham had ever seen. Its structure was alien, almost beautiful in its geometric complexity. Dr. Laurent, the deceased, Moreau continued, stubbing out her cigarette with a forceful twist, was the lead researcher. He succeeded. Chimera is a weaponized virus, capable of genetic rewriting. Imagine, Mr. Statham, a pathogen that doesn't just kill, but reshapes its host, turning them into something else. Statham grunted. Something else. Symptoms manifest in phases. Initial fever and delirium, followed by rapid tissue regeneration coupled with enhanced aggression. The subject becomes a vector, spreading the virus even more efficiently. The final stage, well, we haven't seen the final stage in a controlled environment. But based on the models and leaked data, we believe it results in a completely altered organism. Zombies, then. Statham's tone was laced with grim amusement. Moreau didn't smile. A crude analogy, perhaps, but not inaccurate. Chimera is airborne in a densely populated area. The potential for global catastrophe is substantial. The screens displayed a projected infection map, a terrifying crimson tide engulfing the globe within weeks. Laurent was planning to release it? Not exactly. He developed a failsafe, a genetic key that would render the virus inert after a specified period. He was supposed to deliver it to his benefactors yesterday. He didn't. Instead, he was found silenced. Someone else now has the key. And the virus itself? Stolen. Its current location is unknown. But we have a window, Mr. Statham. 24 hours, that's how long Laurent programmed the failsafe to remain inactive. After that, all bets are off. Moreau pushed a file across the table. Dr. Laurent's last known contact was a woman named Anya Sharma, a geneticist, specializing in viral countermeasures. She worked with Laurent years ago, then seemingly vanished. Our sources indicate she's currently in Marrakesh. The file contained a grainy photograph of a woman with piercing green eyes and a cascade of dark hair. Anya Sharma. Sharma is your primary lead, Mr. Statham. Find her. Find the key. Stop Chimera. Statham flipped through the file, absorbing the scant details. Anya Sharma's last known address, probable contacts, possible affiliations. He closed the file with a snap. Marrakesh it is. He turned towards a side room, a makeshift armory containing an array of weaponry and tactical gear. He selected a silenced pistol, a combat knife, and a compact drone equipped with thermal imaging. He checked the magazines, the action smooth and practiced. Each movement was deliberate, economical. He was a machine, honed for this specific purpose. As he loaded the drone into a specialized backpack, Moreau watched him, her expression unreadable. Marrakesh is a labyrinth, Mr. Statham, full of shadows and secrets. Be careful who you trust. He didn't respond. He just strapped on the backpack and headed for the door. The clock was ticking. 24 hours. Not a moment to waste. The fate of the world, as always, rested on his shoulders. Marrakesh pursuit. The air tasted of cinnamon and gasoline as Statham descended from the bus. Marrakesh struck him as a sensory assault. A riot of colorful robes, hawking voices, and the urgent buzz of mopeds threading the dense crowd. He tugged at his jacket's collar. A futile gesture against exposure. He felt like a wolf amidst strutting peacocks. Moving with concealed purpose, he drifted through the souks like a phantom. Information was paramount, and urgency gnawed at him. Anya had left a whisper of a trail. Khalid, a known receiver of stolen goods with tendrils reaching across the continent, was her contact. Of this, he was certain. The marketplace consumed him. He passed stalls laden with conical stacks of dates, glimmering lanterns painting ephemeral patterns, and the enrapturing melody of a snake charmer's pipe. He bought dates, their saccharine stickiness a brief respite from the metallic tang of anticipation. He found the alley, a claustrophobic passage thick with refuse and the acrid reek of decay. Here, clandestine dealings were routine, and hushed confidences were currency. He recognized them instantly. 3 figures, faces grim, eyes sweeping the surroundings with predatory focus, too clean, too synchronized for mere merchants, hired muscle, and their objective mirrored his own. Point 1. A bruiser with a lightning-shaped scar slashing through his brow met Statham's gaze. Recognition sparked. then morphed into a feral grimace. Him! It's him! Statham acted without pause, becoming a human projectile. Surprise was his sole weapon. He hammered into the scarred man, sending him reeling into a toppling tower of refuse bins. The others reacted as one a curved blade flashed, while the second produced a suppressed pistol. Statham evaded the arc of the blade, feeling the wind of its passage. He seized the attacker's wrist, applying pressure until something gave with a sickening crack. A stifled scream ripped from the man's throat as the knife clattered on the stones. He used the man's body as a screen against the incoming bullet. The suppressed round was barely audible, yet carried the threat of heightened attention. The scarred mercenary, having regained his footing, charged. Statham shoved the injured man aside and pivoted, landing a pinpoint kick to the bruiser's temple. The man collapsed, boneless, onto the filthy ground. The last mercenary, understanding the odds, sought escape. Statham cut him off with brutal speed. A sharp strike to the windpipe silenced him forever. He left them where they fell, knowing the disturbance would ripple outward. Time bled away with each tick of the clock. He had to locate Khalid. Emerging, Statham dissolved back into the swirl of the marketplace. He felt eyes on him, the subtle eddies in the crowd marking his passage. He needed to vanish. He slipped into a hammam, the billowing steam and sharp scent of eucalyptus offering a temporary sanctuary. Shedding his clothes, his muscles coiled tight, he blended with the other bathers, their bodies glistening with moisture. He strained to catch snippets of talk, filtering the white noise for something of value. An hour of simmering tension later, he emerged, feeling marginally cleaner but no less hunted. He'd overheard whispers. Khalid had been spotted near the tanneries, arguing with a European woman, Anya. It was a long shot, but his only play. He flagged down a battered moped, the driver regarding him with mistrust. They snaked through the pandemonium of the streets, narrowly avoiding collision with overloaded carts and roaming dogs. The air thickened with the stench of curing hides and sewage as they approached the tanneries. The driver deposited him at the district's edge, refusing to venture further. The tanneries were a Dantesque vision of vats brimming with dyes, the air saturated with ammonia and the putrid tang of decay, but a place where secrets decomposed and individuals evaporated. Statham began his search, plunging deeper into the murky heart of Marrakesh's underworld. Time was running out like sand through his fingers. The bioengineer's confession. The air hung thick with the metallic tang of ozone and the cloying sweetness of chemical solvents. Statham kicked a discarded servo motor across the floor, the sound echoing in the cramped, subterranean space. Anya Sharma hadn't expected him. The surprise flickered in her eyes, a brief tremor beneath her meticulously composed features. Before she masked it with practiced ease, she'd been hunched over a workbench, soldering tiny components onto a circuit board. Her silver-streaked hair pulled back, in a tight bun. "How did you find me?" she asked, her voice tight. "Doesn't matter," Statham said, his tone flat. He moved further into the workshop, the low ceiling pressing down on him, a physical manifestation of the urgency gnawing at his insides. He gestured to the chaos surrounding them, half-disassembled drones, complex wiring schematics plastered on the walls, banks of humming servers. This is more than just fixing broken appliances, Dr. Sharma." Anya sighed, the fight seemingly draining out of her. She set down the soldering iron with a delicate click. "I suppose it was inevitable," she murmured, more to herself than to him. "Come in." Close the door. He hesitated, then did as she asked. The click of the bolt sliding home amplified the claustrophobic feeling. "Project Chimera," Statham stated, cutting to the chase. "You were involved." Her shoulders slumped. "Involved? I created it." The confession hung in the air, heavy and bitter. She turned to face him, her eyes filled with a weariness that seemed to age her decades. "I was young, arrogant, convinced I was on the cusp of a scientific breakthrough that would change the world that I didn't see the potential for. This." She gestured vaguely towards the ceiling, the world above. Statham remained impassive. "The virus. Where is it?" "Locked. Contained. For now." She walked over to a large monitor, its screen displaying a complex map riddled with coordinates. An abandoned research facility in the Algerian desert, 40 kilometers from the nearest town. "Why there?" secure, remote, and they needed a place to test the dispersal method. Anya's voice cracked. Drones, modified agricultural drones, they're programmed to release the aerosolized virus at predetermined coordinates. The prevailing winds will do the rest. Statham felt a cold dread wash over him. How many drones? 5. Each carries enough payload to infect a city the size of London. He clenched his fists. And the countdown. Anya's hand trembled as she typed furiously at the keyboard, bringing up a series of encrypted files. Already in progress. The first drone is scheduled for launch in 17 hours, 32 minutes. She looked at him, her face pale in the monitor's glow. I tried to stop them, Jason. I really did. But I was expendable. They silenced me, cut me off from the project. I went into hiding, trying to find a way to undo the damage I'd caused. He studied her, searching for any sign of deception. Her eyes were bloodshot, her face etched with guilt and exhaustion. He saw not a mastermind, but a broken woman desperate for redemption. Why tell me now? Because you're the only one who can stop them. I've tracked the drone's flight path, identified the launch site. I can give you the access codes, the override protocols. But you have to promise me you'll stop them. Statham nodded, his jaw tight. I promise. He pulled out his phone and snapped a picture of the map. Show me everything. Now. He needed to know the precise location, the drone's altitude, its speed, the security protocols. Every detail was a weapon. Every second counted. The desert sun would soon rise, and with it, the threat of annihilation. Desert Run. The engine shrieked, its mechanical cry lost in the Sahara's immense silence. Statham fought the steering wheel, the land cruiser a bucking beast beneath him as it clawed across the dunes. Anya clung to the roll cage, knuckles bone white. The digital display on her wrist a taunting countdown. 17:43:12. They're closing. Anya shouted above the engine's thunder and the wind's keen. She strained to see through the rearview mirror, heat shimmer distorting everything, but the rising plumes of sand were undeniable. At least 3, maybe 4 vehicles. Statham's jaw tightened. He hammered the accelerator. The land cruiser lunged, its beefed-up suspension soaking up the worst of the terrain. A glance at the GPS showed their position as a fragile spark on the map's vast, indifferent canvas. We've got to make the wadi before they cut us off. It's the only sanctuary for leagues. He wrestled the gearshift, the vehicle responding with a jolt of raw power. Anya braced as they crested a towering dune, the world dropping away in a stomach-churning freefall before the plunge down the other side. The wind screamed, pelting the windshield with sand like a furious swarm. Then the world dissolved as a choking curtain of sand obliterated the sun, reducing visibility to nil at a full-blown sandstorm. Damn it all! Statham roared, squinting against the maelstrom. He eased off the throttle, tires struggling for purchase in the shifting ground. Anya, your eyes. Talk me through this. Anya leaned forward, swiping at the gritty windshield. Left. Hard left. There's a cluster of rocks just ahead. Statham steered blind, trusting her intuition. The land cruiser pitched violently, suspension protesting under the duress, a near miss. The screech of metal against stone, a jarring chord in the surrounding chaos. Suddenly, a staccato burst of cracks ripped through the air, gunfire. They're here! Anya shrieked, instinctively ducking. They had a tracer on us. Statham answered with a volley from the roof-mounted machine gun, the bullets tearing into the swirling dust, a desperate plea for purchase. The land cruiser shuddered as rounds slammed into its armored shell. We're sitting targets, Anya yelled, fumbling for the ammunition crate. We can't stay put. Statham nodded grimly, his gaze sweeping the swirling vortex. Hold tight. He floored it, the land cruiser fishtailing wildly as he fought for control. The vehicle surged forward, bursting from the storm's heart into a marginally clearer patch of desert, and into a trap. 2 armed figures stood beside a dune buggy, a rocket launcher leveled at them. Beside them stood Thorn, his face a frozen mask of hate, his hand raised. Statham. Thorn's amplified voice boomed across the wasteland. It's finished. Give up now, and I promise you a quick end. Statham ignored the taunt. He yanked the wheel, narrowly evading the rocket that shrieked past their vehicle. The resulting blast sent a concussive wave that vibrated through their bones. "Let's dance?" Statham breathed, his eyes locked on Thorne. He rammed the vehicle into reverse, the engine howling as he spun the Land Cruiser. Throwing up a screen of sand, he swung the machine gun, his finger tightening on the trigger. The fight was on. The desert wind howled, carrying the echo of gunfire and explosions across the desolate expanse. And the timer ticked relentlessly onward. 17:38:47. Fortress of Fear. The transport truck shuddered to a halt, its engine whining in protest against the steep, rutted track. Statham killed the ignition, the sudden silence amplifying the desolate wind whistling through the skeletal remains of what had once been a thriving pine forest. Anya unbuckled her seatbelt, her face pale in the half-light filtering through the grime-streaked windshield. "Welcome to paradise," Statham muttered, his gaze sweeping across the abandoned research facility looming before them. It was a brutal concrete scar on the landscape, squat and windowless, surrounded by a double perimeter fence topped with razor wire that glinted menacingly. It looked more like a prison than a laboratory. "Deserted?" Anya asked, her voice tight. "Seemingly," Statham replied, popping the door. "But something tells me they're not exactly throwing a welcome party." He grabbed the pulse rifle from the back and checked the charge. "Stay behind me." The outer fence was electrified, a fact Statham discovered with a satisfying crackle and a shower of sparks when he tossed a rock against it. Anya, ever observant, pointed out a section where the ground beneath the inner fence was visibly disturbed. "Tunnel?" Statham nodded. "Likely. But let's assume it's monitored. Plan B." He produced a small device from his belt, a compact EMP generator. "This'll buy us a few minutes." He activated it, waited for the brief whine, then cut through the inner fence with a pair of bolt cutters. The air inside the perimeter crackled with unseen threats. Laser grids crisscrossed the open space, their crimson beams painting deadly patterns on the ground. Motion sensors, disguised as innocuous rocks, dotted the landscape. Anya, her eyes constantly scanning, guided Statham through the maze with practiced ease. She moved with the grace of a seasoned operative, her slight frame belying a lethal proficiency. They reached the main entrance, a reinforced steel door with a keypad and a retinal scanner. Statham pulled out a small electronic device and began bypassing the security. "Give me 5 minutes," he grunted, fingers flying across the miniature keyboard. "We don't have 5 minutes, Statham," Anya said, her voice urgent. "I'm picking up thermal signatures. At least a dozen, moving this way." Statham cursed under his breath. "Plan C it is." He slammed his shoulder against the door, again and again, the heavy metal groaning under the relentless assault. On the fourth attempt, the locking mechanism shattered, and the door buckled inwards. They surged inside, into a dimly lit corridor smelling of stale air and disinfectant. The promised welcome party was already waiting. 4 figures emerged from the shadows, clad in black tactical gear and armed with automatic rifles. "Freeze!" one of them barked, his voice distorted by a voice modulator. Statham didn't freeze. He fired a short burst from his pulse rifle, dropping 2 of the guards before they could react. Anya moved with blinding speed, disarming the third with a swift kick to the wrist and then snapping his neck with a sickening crack. The 4th guard managed to get off a few shots, one grazing Statham's arm, before Anya put him down with a precisely aimed headshot. The air filled with the acrid smell of gunpowder and ozone. Statham ripped a strip of cloth from his shirt and tied it around his arm. "Efficient," he said, glancing at Anya, who was already checking their fallen opponents for access cards. "We're on a clock," she reminded him, handing him a keycard. "Let's move." They moved deeper into the facility, the silence broken only by the echo of their footsteps. Each corridor, each room, was a potential death trap. They passed empty laboratories, sterile operating rooms, and rows of cryogenic storage units. The facility felt like a tomb, a monument to twisted science and forgotten secrets. Suddenly, an alarm blared, shattering the silence. Red lights flashed, bathing the corridors in an ominous glow. "They know we're here," Statham said grimly. A wave of guards poured into the corridor, weapons blazing. Statham and Anya took cover behind an overturned lab bench, returning fire with deadly accuracy. The close quarters made maneuverability difficult. Statham fought like a man possessed. His every move precise and lethal, he moved through the hail of bullets with a grace that defied belief. Anya provided covering fire, her shots finding their marks with unnerving consistency. One guard managed to flank them, firing a grenade launcher. Statham saw it coming and shoved Anya to the ground, the explosion rocking the corridor and sending debris flying. He felt a searing pain in his leg, but ignored it, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He finished off the remaining guards with a brutal efficiency, then turned to Anya. "You okay?" he asked, his voice hoarse. She nodded, her face grim. "We're running out of time." The rogue's gambit. The server room throbbed with the electric pulse of countless processors. The stifling air went unnoticed by Statham. His gaze remained riveted on the cascading lines of code splashed across multiple monitors. He moved through the digital architecture with preternatural speed, each bypassed firewall a testament to his ingrained skill. The drone control system lay exposed, a complex nexus capable of directing swarms of unmanned aerial vehicles. But the vehicles themselves were secondary to the horror of their cargo. A few keystrokes brought forth the grim reality. Aerosol dissemination modules, modified crop dusters, turned instruments of death. He magnified the schematics, his stomach churning. The release mechanism was surgically precise, chillingly efficient. This wasn't containment. It was deliberate contagion. A voice, smooth as ice and edged with cruel amusement, pierced the electronic din. "Impressive, Statham. Your speed surpasses expectations." Marcus Thorne materialized from the gloom, reflected light sparking in his granite eyes. A pistol hung casually in his grip, but his posture screamed readiness, a viper, poised to strike. "Thorne," Statham stated, his tone carefully neutral. "What is the meaning of this? Are you complicit?" Thorne's chuckle was a brittle, humorless sound. "Complicit? I orchestrated it. Or perhaps played a pivotal role. A cog, if you will, in a very lucrative machine." "Lucrative," Statham echoed, his expression hardening with contempt. "People will die, and you speak of profit. Sentimentality is a liability." Statham. One You've always indulged certain elements within the agency. Our renegade faction recognized an opportunity. A pandemic breeds demand. Demand fuels profit. Simple economics. Really? Statham advanced. "Who is the architect of this scheme?" Thorne's smile vanished. "That's beyond your clearance. And besides, Statham, your time has expired." He raised the pistol, but Statham was already in motion. He exploded forward, a human projectile aimed at Thorne. The other man reacted instantly, dodging the initial lunge and raising the weapon. Statham intercepted the blow with a braced forearm. The force stinging, he closed the gap, pinning Thorne's weapon hand against his body. The ensuing struggle was a raw, visceral ballet of desperation in the tight confines. Thorne was formidable, exceptionally so. His movements, honed by years of training, were fluid and precise. A brutal kick connected with Statham's ribs, sending a wave of agony through him. Statham grunted. Channeling the pain into his attack, he deflected another strike. His hand clamping down on Thorne's wrist, he twisted, applying relentless pressure, until Thorne's fingers opened and the pistol clattered onto the cold floor. Its sound swallowed by the relentless hum. Now, it was a contest of flesh and bone. Thorne's eyes narrowed, his features hardening into a mask of grim determination. "You have no comprehension of the forces arrayed against you, Statham. You fancy yourself a hero? You're a mere instrument, just like your father." Statham faltered. "What did you say?" Thorne's grin was a predatory flash. "Your father, an honorable man, but ultimately expendable." He stumbled onto truths best left buried. He asked the questions nobody wanted him to ask. A tidal wave of rage consumed Statham, blotting out everything else. His father, he hadn't allowed himself to dwell on it for years. Not since the official narrative painted his death as a training exercise gone wrong. A carefully constructed fiction. "You were there," Statham rasped, his voice a dangerous undertone. "You were a participant in it." "Indeed," Thorne confirmed, his voice dripping with malice. "And now, I intend to finalize what should have been concluded long ago." The Statham lineage ends here. He lunged, a blade materializing in his grip as if conjured from thin air. He slashed, aiming for Statham's jugular. Statham evaded the attack, the steel whispering past his skin. He seized Thorne's wrist once more, forcing him backward. The conflict intensified, fueled by decades of suppressed grief and unbridled fury. Statham recognized, with stark certainty, that this was no longer merely about averting a pandemic. This was intensely, irrevocably personal. Override. "I'm in," Statham grated, the words brittle echoes in the stark chamber. They felt frail, inadequate against the digital shriek erupting from the console. He'd yanked command from Thorne, whose broken form leaned against the wall, a stark reminder of Statham's methods. But triumph tasted like ash, soured by a metallic dread. The countdown blazed. 00:07:12.7 minutes to oblivion, Isabel's voice, unwavering and crisp, cut through his calm. "Time's critical, Statham. Neutralize those drones." He confronted the cascading code, a digital tsunami primed to engulf the globe. Thorne had been thorough, constructing layers of encryption like interwoven shields. Cracking them had bled away precious seconds. Now the real dance began. Almost there, he breathed, fingers blurring over the keys. Each tap was a wager, a calculated risk in a game where the stakes were the world. He needed to rewrite the drone's core programming, sever the tendrils of the virus, reroute their flight paths. A near impossibility in the scant minutes remaining. A new prompt slammed onto the screen. "Engage Global Dispersal Protocol?" Below it, a lone, throbbing button. "Confirm." Statham's breath hitched. This transcended a mere virus. Thorne had booby-trapped the system. Interrupting the dispersal triggered a failsafe. Simultaneous self-destruction. A fiery rain consuming populated zones. He faced a brutal calculus. Unleash the virus, condemning millions, but saving the infrastructure. Or attempt a reprogram, risking immediate, fiery devastation. He squeezed his eyes shut. A fleeting image of his daughter, Lily, piercing his resolve that he couldn't damn her, or any of them. "Isabel," he said, voice tight. "The drones are armed to detonate if I abort." Silence stretched, then her voice, laced with controlled agitation. "There has to be another way." "There is," Statham countered, hands already flying. "But it'll be a photo finish." He was crafting a kill code, a last-ditch maneuver to plunge the drones into the ocean, far from civilization. The instant the reprogramming concluded, a digital prayer hurled into the void. He initiated the override. The clock ticked down. 00:04:58. Sirens wailed, painting the room in strobing crimson. The system snarled, spitting out error messages. Barricading his progress, he clawed past them, each one a victory, his focus a razor's edge. The world beyond the console dissolving. 00:03:17. The kill code was nearing completion. Just the final targeting vectors remained. Suddenly, a stark warning slashed across the display. "Unauthorized access detected. Lockdown initiated." Thorne, the Viper, had been playing possum. Feigning unconsciousness, biding his time. Statham flicked a glance. Thorne was scrambling upright, eyes burning with a manic fervor, snatching a length of discarded pipe. Statham couldn't afford the distraction. The fate of billions swayed in the balance. "Isabel, I need a favor," he ground out. "He's trying to pull the plug." 00:01:42. Targeting vectors locked. He triggered the final sequence, the override surging through the system, a digital tidal wave drowning Thorne's sabotage. The timer flashed. 00:00:30. The drones were responding, their flight paths bending, veering from their intended marks. Thorne lunged, the pipe a blur. Statham ducked, the metal singing past his ear. He had no time for this dance. 00:00:10. Kill code engaged. The drones were secured on their new vector, plummeting toward the vast indifference of the Pacific. 00:00:00. Silence descended. The alarms stilled, the crimson faded. Only Statham's ragged gasps broke the quiet, punctuated by the distant susurrus of waves. He turned to face Thorne. eyes blazing with Arctic fury. But the fight had ebbed from the man's face, leaving only a stunned, disbelieving mask. "It's over," Statham stated, voice devoid of emotion. Later, in a secure calm, Isabel's voice, a mix of relief and weary satisfaction, broke through. "We got them, Statham. Thanks to your intel, the rogue faction is exposed. Authorities are moving in." A pause. "They were using Thorn as a patsy, a fall guy if it cratered." Statham leaned back, the adrenaline ebbing, leaving behind an empty ache. It was done. For now. But he knew, deep in his bones, this was just a prelude. The world was a brutal landscape, and there would always be those willing to trade lives for power. He'd be ready. He had no other choice.